wrongly accused of package theft publicly by the HOA with no evidence. Realistically, could we have pursued a defamation case or something similar? Posted by Independent 720. My wife and I were finally able to get enough money together to buy a condo unit in California near our jobs and family. It came with a monthly HOA fee of $600 per month, a high price but depressingly average in our area. Pretty much from the start, we've had negative experiences with the HOA and their management company. Both of our cars were towed the day we moved in. I won't completely put that on them, as there are plenty of signs saying that cars without a permit would be towed. However, both we and our realtor told the HOA in advance what day we'd be moving in, and our realtor did mercifully help us recoup the towing costs. Received multiple written warnings that we would be fined if oil leaking from one of our vehicles in our assigned spot was not promptly cleaned up. The picture they included as evidence of the spill was not of our assigned spot. Despite an immediate response from us, it took more than a month and a second written warning for them to acknowledge the mistake. Plumbing work requested by another resident was incorrectly assigned to our unit, despite us telling the plumber that came to our door and emailing the HOA management company that day. We received a bill a month later of nearly $200 for the service call. It was only because we had a screenshot of a message that the HOA had sent acknowledging the clerical error that we got the charge dismissed. Following the plumber's visit, they had deleted the message thread admitting the error from the portal. All this was just the precursor. Since we'd moved in, there had been ongoing problems with package theft. The complex is gated, both for cars and pedestrians. The mailboxes for the units are located in two main subterranean garages, and packages from all services, except USPS, are often left on top of the metal mail containers. There is no secure package delivery area. Over the course of the first year, we had almost a dozen small packages stolen. It was incredibly aggravating, but luckily nothing too big. All things that could be resent at no cost. Despite emails and calls to the HOA management company, nothing changed. And we weren't the only ones. Handwritten signs from other residents started to appear above the mailboxes, imploring people to report theft to the local police or encourage deliveries to be left at individual units. About a year ago, the tenor began to change. New typed signs appeared above the mailboxes from the HOA, instructing residents to report suspicious behavior to the HOA and police, make sounds to scare off potential thieves, take pictures, but to not confront anyone physically. It felt encouraging to see that they were taking some proactive steps, albeit still less than the most efficient measures. The theft still continued. About 2 months later, there was a dramatic update, a description of 2 suspects plus a license plate number. My wife's license plate number. It had been posted at multiple mailbox locations around the complex, claiming that this car had been seen in connection with recent thefts. Not wanting to look more incriminating, we left the signs up while we called the HOA's 24/7 hotline. It was then escalated to the president of the board, and we removed the signs ASAP. The following day, we got an email from the president claiming that the license plate was posted publicly because it didn't appear as registered to a resident in any of their documents, even though we have had an official parking permit since we moved in. He went on to say that an eyewitness had reported the car to the volunteer security committee, who later posted the signs. Thinking back a few days prior, my wife and I had both gone into the garage before heading out to the store. I had stopped by the mailbox, retrieved a few envelopes from our slot, and then I checked some packages to see if we gotten any deliveries, but did not pick up any boxes. It wasn't until I was back at my wife's car that I noticed presumably another resident out of the corner of my eye that had been watching me walk away from the mailboxes. Not thinking anything of it, we then proceeded to drive out of the complex to run our errands. After some back and forth in the subsequent days, the HOA management company agreed to send out an email clarification apologizing for posting the wrong license plate. We asked if our monthly fees could be forgiven for a few months given the amount of hassle that this had caused, the way our reputation with our neighbors had been affected, and so on. The HOA board that approved the signs in the first place unsurprisingly denied that notion. It was cited that they were a non-profit HOA with all fees currently allotted to existing costs, so if we didn't make our payment, others would have to pay more. Instead, they offered us free rental of the community room in the complex for a year. Since then, the theft problem has continued. Several neighbors, including us, have asked the HOA to install a security camera system near the mailboxes. It's been ruled out as too expensive, despite a $2 million emergency fund existing. My question, after all of this, is it accurate that HOA's nonprofit status insulates them from any sort of financial liability in a sort of defamation situation like this? It makes it feel like they can dodge responsibility while acting recklessly. They've done nothing to address the theft situation, and it's continued unchecked. I mean, this is our first experience with an HOA. We'd heard the horror stories going into it, but we were surprised at the string of negative experiences where we were mistakenly involved. Makes you feel sort of helpless when you're having to deal with the hassle and the aftermath. This HOA Karen property story took a twist I didn't expect. It's called No Good Deed by Carl the Well Endowed, and it has an update. So this has been developing over the last 6 weeks or so, when an elderly woman, her friend, and her handicapped niece moved into the house beside us. Things started off interesting, but the women all seemed nice enough. The wife and I were finishing up a movie at around 11 p.m. when we heard something at the side of our house. It sounded like someone was trying to get through our side gate into the backyard. Upon investigating, I saw that someone was trying to get in. Our new neighbors had just driven into town and were confused about which side gate was theirs and were attempting to open our locked gate. I helped them get into their own yard. Their real estate agent had left their key in the backyard, and I helped them move their bags into their house. I got to meet the 3 women who were moving in, and I realized that they were in no shape to be moving heavy things around the house. The new owner, Candy, not her real name, but her real name is still a stripper's name, so I think it works. She's in her 70s and gets around with a cane. Her friend, I believe that they are romantically involved, but we live in the South, so I think she's accustomed to not saying so explicitly, gets around with a walker, and the niece is in her 50s and is quite severely mentally handicapped. Seeing this, I offered to help them move anything that the movers had misplaced. Candy was mentioning that some items were in the wrong rooms, but that I had to be getting home soon and would be back tomorrow to help. I arrived at their place around 8 the next night, after getting our kids to bed, and just moved all their boxes from the garage into the correct rooms. Not a big deal. The real issue was that they had some large pieces of furniture that were misplaced, and I did not have a dolly to move them around on my own. At this point, Candy and her friend were being extremely thankful and polite, so I told the women that I would be more than happy to snag one from a friend on the way home from work tomorrow, and I could help to move the rest of the stuff, and that I would be over at about the same time. Well, work the next day turned into a complete dumpster fire. I ended up having to stay at work until a bit after midnight to get everything done that needed to be done. When I got home, I wrote a note explaining what had happened and that I would still be willing to help move things when I got off of work tomorrow. After this, I never had another good experience with them. I went over the next day and I asked if they had seen my note, and Candy said, "Because you flaked, I had to hire someone to do this for me." I was completely taken aback, as this was a complete reversal from her original demeanor. 2 days later, Candy had someone setting up the internet, and as these are all new constructions, a new line had to be buried. The box which the line connected into for Candy's house and our own was a couple of feet on our side of the property line. As this was done on a Saturday, I was home while the line was being buried, and I asked the installer to run the line on the neighbor's side of the property line until he could turn it into a box. Neighbors had told him to run it along our pavers leading to the backyard about 2 feet over our property line. I'm sure he did not realize that he was on our property, but Candy did. The next week, we got hit with a fine from our HOA for leaving dirt from work on our property in our neighbor's lawn. Going outside, I saw that there was a small amount of sand right around where the buried line came into the box on our property. And when I explained to the HOA that this was caused by the installation of the neighbor's cable, the fine was dropped. Clearly, Candy had called this in, which really ticked me off, but she would not come to the door when I was knocking to talk to her about it. Small things like this kept happening. I would go out and our recycling was full, as it takes a few weeks to get your bin delivered, so Candy just threw her crap in hours. We had an HOA inspector come over to assess unauthorized permanent structures on our property. These structures were a trampoline, which is not considered permanent by the HOA, and a small play structure, which is. However, we applied with the HOA to install that one. Well, she has escalated things over the last couple of weeks. The Monday before last, we had a crew coming in to install solar panels on our home. While this was being done, the cops showed up, as someone had called in that people were breaking onto our property and trying to get through the back door. Cops are cool and said that someone must have just been confused about what was going on, and I informed them of the issues that we were having with our neighbor, but they didn't say much about it, and they didn't do anything. I was out with the installers working in the yard, and there was no way that anyone could reasonably believe that people were breaking into our home. Once again, we had an inspector called on us to check out an unapproved modification to our roof, the solar panels that we paid $400 to the HOA to install. On Sunday, the cops showed up again, and this time it was much more serious. The call that they had gotten this time was that our children were locked in our backyard in the heat, and that my 2-year-old was out there naked, and that they were screaming to be let back in. Basically, we were being accused of hurting our children. Thankfully, the screaming was still going on when the cops arrived, as my 2-year-old was squealing and laughing, running through the sprinklers. Took a little longer to assuage the cops this time, and they told me that I probably should have my daughter in a swimsuit next time. Due to the nature of this call, they did speak with the neighbor afterwards. Candy feigned ignorance and said that her handicapped niece must have placed the call. The niece is almost completely nonverbal, so this was clearly BS, but I do not think that the cops wanted to deal with this and talked with us one more time, explaining their conversation with Candy before heading out. Not really sure what we can do at this point. I submitted a complaint to the HOA, but I do not think that this is going to do anything, and I'm not sure if this has progressed to criminal harassment yet. But I am sure this is far from over. Update: the neighbor on the opposite side of Candy, let's call her Katie, has been getting some work done on her home, including the installation of a sunroom. At 6 a.m. on a Sunday, Candy made her way into Katie's backyard through the normally locked side gate and went into the sunroom to look around. Katie was notified by her security system that someone was on her property, so she called the cops. Candy was gone by the time the cops arrived, and Katie did not recognize her, but Candy's return to her property was caught on our Ring camera. The commotion next door got us up, and my wife checked our notifications. Katie had the cops issue a trespass to Candy, and we requested that they also inform Candy that she was not welcome on our property either. Cops told us it would be criminal trespass if she does so after being warned. We reached out to a local security company regarding getting cameras on the sides and the back of our home. The quote is a bit out of our budget, so we will be looking around for more options, but we will definitely be installing them. I know we can save a ton by setting up our own system, but the wife hates exposed wires, and it's definitely out of my capacity to do something that she would find acceptable. This commenter is so right. Cameras, 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 and not a place for her to hide. Please get as many as needed to cover 100% of your home and property. Hey, the video won't lie. Mess with my kids, lose your house. Posted by Outrageous Duck 164. I, a 50-year-old male, have 2 stepsons, who I just call my sons as I've been in their life since they're 8 and 10, and they're now young men. My wife and I made it a point to have a great relationship with their dad, Jason, and made sure that he had a chance to be around as much as possible, even staying at our place frequently to be around his boys, as he lived over an hour away and couldn't afford to live closer. Jason had a crazy ex-girlfriend who had tried to claim that they were married, variously saying common law, or that they were married in secret, or married on an Indian reservation. But he had a restraining order out against her because she was nuts and had tried various ways to screw up his life. The ex is a horrible person. She had been arrested several times for forgery and fraud. She and Jason had a fiery relationship, but he had it in his head that he should make it work, as he did like her daughters and grandson. But the ex got him sent to prison for violating his probation when he left the county to go to his mom's funeral and hadn't filed an appropriate form. I'm a little unclear on this part, but she played a major role in it. After he got out several months later, she wanted him back and he wasn't having it. He made a clean break, moved to a new town, but she continued to harass him, thus leading to the restraining order. She would send texts to people pretending to be police investigating, saying that he was drunk driving or taking drugs, or pretending to be friends and family to spread rumors and hurt him. She even sent texts to my kids from burner phones, pretending to be other family or friends, saying awful things about their dad. Jason died unexpectedly of a heart attack, and it was a shock to all of us. He was finally living in peace, had great relationships with friends and his sons, and was the happiest that he'd ever been. He didn't have much. He lived in a single-wide trailer that a friend had let him stay in for free, some boxes of tools, old comics, video games. He had D&D books and modules, mementos from his times in the Marines, and an old 2009 pickup, which, on several occasions, he had promised my oldest son. Let's call him Paul. Jason did not have a will, and my wife became the executor of the estate because, at the time of death, both the sons were minors and the sole heirs. We packed up the things out of Jason's trailer and took the truck, which had Jason's name on the title, but we had to wait for the death certificate to retitle it in Paul's name. But the ex called Jason's sister, demanding the truck, saying it was hers and posting on Facebook that she was reporting it as stolen and so on, which really ticks me off. After we got the death certificate, we went to the DMV and found out that she had stolen the title to the truck by forgery, saying that she was the only heir and we couldn't transfer the title. My son was driving around with a packet documenting everything in case he was pulled over for driving a stolen vehicle. We had to get a lawyer and start a special process that took several months before a director at the DMV fixed it, and we were able to title the truck with the ex continuing to threaten and cause problems, and it made everyone miserable, and then it cost us several $1,000s in legal fees. Early last year, we got through probate court and the ex never showed, in spite of saying that she was the wife and the sole heir. The court declared the boys as the sole heirs and my wife as the executor of the estate in their names. Instead of showing up, the ex sent an email to the court saying that she couldn't make it because of work, she doesn't have a job, and that Jason was never around his kids. He didn't miss a single high school football game, home or away, and never missed a home track meet, and that they were just leeching off his SSI for the back child support. She went on with a bunch of other non-relevant crap just to trash my wife and sons, and pretty much said that it didn't matter what the judge said, that she should get everything. During this time, we found out that Jason's name was on the deed of the ex's house. In order to get a reduction in property taxes because of Jason's disabled veteran status, she had filed papers to put him on the deed, but not the mortgage. If she had just left my kids alone, we would have let it go, but she had pushed principal beyond the point of denial, so we filed suit for half the house. The property's worth about $380,000. We went to court-ordered mediation, and she rejected a mediated settlement of a fraction of the value, which we would have taken. In April, her lawyer dropped her, and so she got a continuance on the first hearing. She then claimed that she had found a will from Jason, designating her as the sole heir, in addition to another signed paper that she found as a quitclaim deed from Jason for the house. I did wonder if it was this or her not paying him which caused him to drop her. She was going to go back to probate court to reopen or appeal probate and needed time for that, which the judge granted. On Tuesday, finally went to court on the deed to the house. She no-showed. The judge had inquiries to the probate court and she never filed any papers. The trial lasted less than 10 minutes as the judge recorded the facts and awarded the estate half the property. They will impanel 3 lawyers to determine how the property will be sold, as she's going to lose her house and for the first time in her miserable life face the consequences of her actions. Screw around and find out. You try to be nice to somebody, they take advantage of you like that. You give them an inch, they take a mile, and eventually they get so greedy it just falls all up in their face. Way to go, OP. The The HOA finds me, but I'm not even in the HOA. Click the video on your screen so you don't miss the fallout of this one, and I'll see you there.